Hello, good morning. Happy Friday. It's a bit past 9:45 because I had a bit of a technical glitch, but I'm TK and this is Coach on the Rocks. Lovely to see you. As always on Fridays, I'm talking about the episode of the podcast we've just released. It's called Leading with Agility, the podcast is, and you can find it in your favorite podcast player. So, do check it out. Because today on the podcast, we're talking about labor rights and why they are still important. It's an interesting topic. I would say that, if you work in HR, I'm sure you're well aware of that. But if you classify yourself as a modern leader, might be something old-fashioned that, you might not necessarily have been looking at. And it's interesting that, we're talking about the perspective of Amazon and the union shaping up in the warehouse in Coventry in the UK. And that's an interesting one. Obviously, Labour as a party, which is an entity that derives their values from the labour movement, is now in power in the UK. So it's a good occasion to talk about it. But I think the interesting thing is that many modern leaders are just not exposed to the needs of the labour force. And I don't mean just like employees, knowledge workers, the white collars and so on. It's an interesting one because if you look at the economy as a whole, I think things like labor rights, unions, worker rights, they seem to be a bit taboo, right? They seem old-fashioned, and they aren't. I think we're in here in Coach on the Rocks, I focus a lot on knowledge workers, but there are people, laborers, the labor force, however you want to call them, the beautiful, talented people that put their great sweat and skills into action every day, that I think in many situations have their rights neglected. And I think it's really sad. And when things go south and they actually feel like, oh, we need to do something, they form a union, now it's a big outcry. It's like, oh, how, and so on. We talk about it a lot in our podcast. But I would like to highlight the fact that if you, like myself, right, you rose through the rank as a knowledge worker, you might be, of a younger generation, you might not even had that much to do with unions, not being a part of it. If, I'm sure in HR, more or less quite a lot about that. And I'm sure you have a bit of a headache when I talk about that. So you might feel like you want to unsubscribe and unfollow me. It's of course your choice, but, maybe you'd like to reflect about the fact that many younger leaders don't really understand because they themselves, like I have to say myself, are privileged not to be in a situation when they had to fight for their rights, when they have been exploited. And I think it's important to recognize, maybe it's not the, International Workers' Day and so on, maybe I'll pick this topic up at the beginning of May, but I think it's important that we reflect, because one of the points I made in the podcast is okay, so as a leader, you might feel like unions are a problem to you, but actually they usually happen because you, as a leader, messed up. I wish that we didn't, and I wish that there was no need for these situations, but there is. And if you want to know more, feel free. Just go in and listen to our podcast. Some amazing conversation there. Actually, I would say a lot of disagreement. I was quite open about my thoughts and my own reflections. And I have to say, this particular episode of the podcast was one of the, if not the most difficult one for me, when I was thinking about what to say and what I really think about the situation and how it came about. So, if you'd like to hear a decent chat with some back and forth and tension, Leading with Agility, on your favorite podcast player, new episode available now. And if you had a listen, if you had a think, and you had a good week, I'm hoping that you will enjoy the weekend, some well-deserved rest, and I will see you again for Coach on the Rocks on Monday, and hopefully this time with no technical glitches. Have a nice one. Bye-bye.